everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Welcome to India Factoring Chat Show. Factoring, one-stop solution for your global aspirations. I'm Vinod Wasan, your host for the day. Today we have two eminent speakers to join in our show. Before that, let me take you through India Factoring first. India Factoring offers working capital solutions through their factoring product aimed at converting your receivables into cash. The company is a subsidiary of a European bank, Fimbank PLC Malta, and is registered with the RBI as an NBFC factor. India Factoring is also 83 category authorized dealer. Through our global network, we offer one-stop solutions around receivable finance. Today, we have two amazing speakers who are going to join. They will talk about global trade efforts taken by government to promote trade, working capital finance in India, and solves all your queries pertaining to trade and financial aspect of your business. Please stay tuned. Let us welcome our first speaker, Dr. Badri Narayanan Gopalakrishnan, PhD, Lead Advisor and Head Trade Commerce Strategic Economic Dialogue, NITI Aayog. It is a joint secretary rank position leading the work on trade and commerce policy strategies as well as strategic economic dialogue for the government of India's NITI Aayog that functions under the chairmanship of the Honorable Prime Minister of India, coordinating with different ministers, mainly commerce, finance, and state governments. He is an applied economist with 20 years experience and expertise in economic modeling, data science in many areas such as international trade, energy, agriculture, economic impact on new technologies, etc. Welcome to the talk show, Dr. Badri Narayanan. We are honored to have you in our show today.
Thank you, Mr. Vinod. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Let us welcome our second speaker, Mr. Ravi Velacha, CEO, India Factoring and Finance Solutions Private Limited. Experienced banking and financial services professional with expertise in factoring and supply chain finance, and current CEO of India Factoring. Welcome to the talk show, Ravi.
Yeah, hi. Glad to be here. Good morning, Mr. Badri, Dr. Badri. Thanks.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Ravi.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Yeah. So let us, start the questions. I will start with Dr. Badri regarding the current trade trends in India and the new initiatives government is taking in. The first one is in 21 to 22 fiscal ended on a cheerful note for India's international trade. Indian exporters did not just demonstrate COVID resilience, but they have bounced back very strongly with good export sales. Over 400 billion India has achieved for the last financial year. So it is a very significant increment. And there are many key initiatives by Indian government to boost export trade in India, like free trade agreement with Australia, UAE, etc. And also flagship program like Local for Global and PLI scheme. So we'd like to understand from you what are the current initiatives government is undertaking to promote more trade from India.
Thank you, Mr. Vinod. It's a great question. Absolutely, as we all know, this has been a great year for trade exports, particularly from India. We have the record growth in exports and highest ever export level that we have ever done. In goods, we have crossed $420 billion, and in services, almost more than half of that. So these are really big numbers, and to some extent, it's also coming from the price increases, but there is a real growth effect that can be derived from this. So that also has been one factor for us to go for all these free trade agreements, wherein we can gain more access to global markets. So as you rightly mentioned, we have UAE, we have Australia deals already done. There is a more comprehensive deal being negotiated with Australia. And there is a wide range of trade agreements that are being negotiated now on UK, with EU, with Canada, and several other countries, and many countries already. It's in media, and many other countries are in the making. We are discussing. We are in some initial discussions. So it's really important for Indian exporters to gain all these market access in different countries. And while negotiating, we are taking care of the needs of the exporters. In several countries, the tariffs are high, so we are negotiating to reduce the tariffs, so that the exporters can, have a competitive advantage there. In some ways, we are at a disadvantage because many other countries have signed such trade deals, and we don't have such trade deals. So we are at a disadvantage now. But by signing all these deals, we are at a level playing field with other comparable competitors in other countries. So that in itself is a major step by the government, all these trade deals and so on. And secondly, we also have a lot of export promotion initiatives. You also talked about the production linked incentive scheme, which is not directly connected to exports, but eventually it also has an export oriented production in some of the sectors. Some of the sectors are export oriented, some of the sectors are import substituting, and some others are strategic sectors, labor intensive sectors and strategic sectors. So we have this combination in the PLI scheme, and that also can, because for exports, we need few different fundamental requirements, right? One is market access, which we are working on with the other countries. Second is quality standards and scale. And these are all kind of interrelated. If you have a large scale, then you can ensure that the quality is good. You meet all the standards. You have the money that you need to spend for improving the standards and so on. So for increasing the scale, we did not have a very concrete scheme in India for a long time. We had capital subsidy schemes, and that they did not work so well, because I've personally known many companies that would just use the capital subsidy scheme to get some missionaries, but no production would happen. So that has been a long time riddle in the policymakers as to how do we spend money in such a way that it leads to actual production and employment. And that is how the PLA scheme was born. And that has definitely an impact of creating the environment needed for exports growth, which is, as I mentioned, scale, increasing the scale. So that is an important aspect. And particularly, I mean, there are many schemes. I think I'll need 1 or 2 hours to keep on explaining all the schemes, and many of the schemes all of you already know. But I want to just slightly emphasize on what we are doing at Niti Aayog. So at Niti Aayog, as you all know, we think about the longer term strategies and deeper analytical insights that are needed for policy, and we work closely with the Commerce Department of Commerce on all these aspects, trade negotiations, and so on. So one is we are directly part of all these processes. But even more importantly, we have, you might have seen this export preparedness index. That's something that Niti Aayog developed and published. We have so far had two editions of that, one for 2019 and one for 2021. That actually quantifies and ranks the different states in terms of how prepared are they for exporting. And that's very important. We need this competitive federalism where you let the states compete with each other to enhance their exporting infrastructure and environment. So that is another way in which we are nudging all the states to perform well. We look deeply into the various parameters that influence the preparedness for exports. And there are several other initiatives where, for example, it's not sufficient to just sign these agreements, but we have to take these trade agreements to the exporters. I think we may also let MSMEs and so on. So those, when if they want to capitalize on these trade deals, we have to let them know what is happening, like what markets are we getting access to, how do they make the best out of these trade deals and so on. So we're also doing that kind of outreach programs. We organize some webinars, some seminars, and we are coming up with some capacity development programs and so on for the exporters to understand what is happening. So these are all some broad areas of work in terms of trade creation, export promotion, and capacity development. that we are doing at Niti Aayog and rest of the government.
Thank you, Dr. Badri. Actually, very well explained. And there is no doubt the government is taking lots of steps. That is the reason the export is promoting well. And also, as you clearly mentioned, now Niti Aayog is working more inclusively by taking, the benefits are going to the exporters. And we are also very eagerly waiting for the EU new trade free trade agreement coming this month end. I think you will be as a lead advisor working closely with Commerce Ministry to work out. So because EU is a big region for India in terms of trade, so definitely it will be much beneficial to the exporters. And we'll move on to our speaker, Mr. Ravi. Ravi, please share your view on current trade and demand in the globe, and also please elaborate us in the high growth scenario. All segment exporters are pushing for maximum capitalization of this demand. So in this scenario, how the factoring plays a role for exporters?
Thanks, Vinod. Interesting question. Of course, as Dr. Badri and Nayan mentioned earlier, there has been tremendous growth. Like last year, last financial year, India achieved the merchandise growth of $400 billion plus, plus service exports. So in totality of $650 billion plus of exports out of India. That is expected to go up to approximately $800 billion plus in this current financial year. So on the back of this, how do you finance this trade element? The international trade is something which is equally important. Till now, the traditional means of financing has always been there, and it will remain also. But there are new emerging trends which are there, and of course, factoring and supply chain finance is one of the key areas where which enables the global trade. In fact, most of the global trade across the world, primarily in developed countries, mature markets, is backed by the factoring or supply chain finance mechanism. Unlike a traditional banking mechanism, which is LC backed, we have seen that the LCs are gradually diminishing over the world, and the world is moving across to more open account trade. Now, that's a reason also why they are moving across to more open account trade, is that the world is getting close knit. The world is more globalized, more the underlying reason for LC was that the buyer and the seller were not having trust in each other, whether the goods will be delivered, whether the payment will be made, respectively. The same thing is being done now with the world being more closed. That's why people are relying more on the open account trade. And that's where the mechanisms of financing also has to move on to the new age, which is what factoring is all about. Just to share with you some insights, we at India Factoring are the leaders in India in providing factoring services under two-factor mechanism with FCI as our associate for the global trade. We did close to around about $466 million worth of business last year, and this year possibly maybe $650 million plus of business by itself. Now, this is backed by the growing awareness of the factoring services by the exporters and moving on from the plain working capital finance to the new age mechanism. I'll tell a little bit more about factoring, why it is more beneficial for the exporters. We all know primarily SMEs and mid segment exporters are choked for finance, or not able to grow their turnover because they are not able to provide adequate collaterals. Banks are primarily reliant on the financing part, on the collateral backed structures. However, as a factor, we rely on the underlying strength of the receivables rather than on the any such collateral. So it's primarily an unsecured product offering, which eases out the working capital in a much effective manner. On top of that, with an exports which is backed by the underwriter based out of the buyer's country, so we are underwriting the buyer's risk. So we are fulfilling that gap also, where we are underwriting the buyer's risk. So what it entails is that the proposition to the exporter is without recourse. The buyer's coverage is there, so he can just concentrate on manufacturing without bothering about the payment, defaults, or any such scenario. More so, since this is an without recourse proposition, it effective on the balance sheet for the exporter also. What it means is that they are not carrying it as loans and advances. It's a assignment route which we are taking, and that means that the receivables are actually sold off. So that effectively means that the balance sheet is more, optimized, I would say, and at a better cost structure on an optimum level, and enables them to improve their ratios. This enables them to perform on a high growth mechanism, uh, grow the turnover, take on more orders, and increase their throughput, which in a sense contributes to the overall exports out of India. So that's the in a broader scenario what I wanted to discuss about the factoring and how we can do more to support exporters out of India. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Ravi, for giving an insight on how factoring plays a major role in the growth segment. And also, it is very clearly mentioned LC is going out of market, where factoring plays a major role for exporters. So it's not only financing arrangement, also securing receivables and helping growth of all companies. And we'll move on to the next question, which is to Dr. Badri. So regarding currently the input cost, increasing input cost and supply chains are the major challenges MSMEs are facing. So this challenge is not allowing them to make a complete advantage of the current global demand. So we are please elaborate as initiatives taken by Niti Aayog to support MSMEs, and please share us how MSMEs can manage the situation more efficiently to take advantage of the global demand.
Yeah, thank you. And on the prices, the input costs, definitely it's a global issue. So we are seeing this globally. Every country is facing this problem. If To be frank, the increase in costs and prices in India are relatively low compared to other countries like US and so on, particularly given the longer term inflation trends, price trends in different countries. So in the developed countries, you expect the prices to change very little, like the inflation is very low. Whereas in countries like India, the developing countries, we are used to higher levels of inflation because we are growing fast as well. So if you take that kind of vantage point, that kind of perspective, then you see that our prices are increasing. Definitely, it is worrisome. It's affecting the MSMEs. It's also affecting the common people. But at the same time, in relative scale, it's not very high compared to other countries, and that is because of the various initiatives taken by the government and by the different both the central government and the different state governments, and also the Reserve Bank's policy measures. So if you take all these coordinated efforts by different government agencies and RBI, we are in a relatively safe situation. And now you also if you observe closely right now, the global oil prices are also kind of stabilizing now. Although anything can happen after some time later, we don't know. But at least there is a broad trend of stabilization happening. And you also see how the government is very dynamic. For example, if you take recent restrictions on exports of certain agricultural commodities like wheat, cotton, and so on, this did not happen as a knee-jerk reaction or something. It happened. It was done based on very diligent observation of what is happening globally, what is happening in India, to directly answer your question, like in terms of keeping the prices low, or avoiding further increases in surge in prices. So there are all kinds of measures being taken in a very dynamic way. Situations are changing every day, so we are coming up with policy measures that make sure that the costs are not passed through into the poorer people, the MSMEs, and so on. And then also the other thing that I mentioned is the tax reductions that are done by the central government and the state governments in terms of the excise taxes on fuels and so on. So all these things are going to help. However, there are certain things that are out of our control, like you also mentioned about the shipping containers shortage and so on. There we are beginning to build some capacity that may only show up in the longer term. We may not see immediate impact, but in the longer term, we may see some development of container shipping industry in India and so on. So we are looking at some such measures so that it's something that we learn from the current situation, that we are lacking in certain aspects and we have to develop them. So that's all part of our Atmanirbhar Bharat, the self-reliant India story, where we want more development of domestic development of shipping containers and so on. So this is going to take some time, but in the meantime, the MSMEs are always the priority for the government because they are the largest employment generators. So the government has been always coming up with procedures and policies and measures that particularly shield the MSMEs from all these kind of shocks. So and I think credit access finance is definitely one important area, because at the end of the day, input costs are increasing, but the prices are also increasing. So if the MSMEs have the money, the working capital, the money to buy those inputs, they can still sell them at reasonable prices, and at least make some small profits. So in that sense, finance plays an important role, credit and finance. So in organizations like ECGC, Exim Bank, they're also doing their bit, and your role also, whatever Mr. Ravi mentioned before, that also is very important. Factoring is also very important. So yeah, so this is the broad set of responses I have on this.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Badri. So, as you mentioned, government is taking lots of efforts to safeguard MSMEs. We can see that dynamic decisions taken to restrict some of the exports when price fluctuation is high, and also we are happy to compare to our peer countries. Still, we are more competitive. Our MSMEs are good. So, this is a temporary scenario. With the government's support, definitely MSMEs will come out. And also, as Dr. Badri mentioned, finance plays a major role. During this current scenario, though the raw material price is going high, in the meantime, the companies require more working capital finance to manage the current scenario. So, Ravi, please give us more insight on. There are traditional banking arrangement is there. Many companies are using, but still in this growing scenario and the raw material, the input costs are increasing. How the MSMEs can get benefit from the factoring product?
Yeah, exactly. Vinod, exactly the point which I made in my first question is that MSMEs and SMEs primarily are choked. Of course, the cost is increasing. Can you do something about the cost? I don't think so, because this is a global trend which is happening, and global trend is on the back of two black swan events on the back, continuous basis. One was the global pandemic, followed by the geopolitical situation which is currently going on. So, can you contain that cost? So the inflationary trends are there across the world. Uh, Fortunately for this time, the demand is not down, right? The demand is still high, maintained, but the supply constraints and the cost pressures are coming in, and that's what eating into it. And that's where the SMEs and MSMEs are getting affected also. So while their input costs on raw material and other components, are increasing, what they need is possibly early realization of payments from the buyers. Now, obviously, the buyers also want elongation of the payments, because they are also facing a similar situation, because there might be a strain on their working capital itself, because they have to address many other payments and many other scenarios as well. In that scenario, the factoring product comes into the play and has an effective solution where we can step in and help the buyer maintain that payment schedule, and by way of making an early payment to the supplier. Supplier is at ease, the buyer is at ease, and we collect from the buyer at the end of the tenure and make good of it. So it's a win-win situation for all the stakeholders involved, and the product being an unsecured, it turns out to be a more effective solution for an SME or MSME supplier who may not have that much sort of a collateral to provide to the bank for the traditional banking facility. And that's where I call the effectiveness, the real effectiveness of factoring is much better than a plain working capital from the banks. Thanks.
Thanks, Ravi. We have an audience question. Is Ramanathan. Dear panelist, do you foresee the use of AI, machine learning, and blockchain in cross-border merchandise trade? Movement of containers, tracks, etc., can get stuck up for very simple reasons. Dr. Badri, can you please?
Sure. Absolutely, these are very important technologies, and if you look at the recent trends in the agricultural exports, for example, the Commerce Ministry, the Department of Commerce has already developed some blockchain solutions for some of the agricultural products. So we a few months ago we published an article in in one of the online outlets. I'm happy to share that with you. So in that we had actually explained these aspects. So blockchain can really help the traceability tracking, and like what Mr. Ramanathan mentions here, in terms of tracking the movement of containers and avoiding they're getting stuck up and so on. That is definitely a very important thing that we can track using these technologies. But even more importantly, this can be used to track also the quality standards, and particularly this is very important for the agricultural products. That's why I was talking about them, because India, being such a large agricultural agro-based economy, we are not proficient in terms of exporting perishable agricultural products, and the products that are that require a lot of compliance with a lot of standards. So there again, this is very important. Blockchain technology can really help in that. And similarly, AI and ML also can be helpful in terms of not only the infrastructure part, the logistics part, but also the kind of things that we just discussed before about the price fluctuations and so on. So both at a policy level and at a company level, exporter level, these technologies can be used to predict what is coming up timely, and devise strategies accordingly. So these are all some examples, but definitely my short answer is yes. These are definitely important technologies.
Thank you, Dr. Badri. Hope Ramanathan question answered well. Um, we'll move on to another question. It's for the new guidelines from government. And sorry, we have another viewer's question. It's from Vinod Chaube. Dr. Gopalakishan, my question to you. The schemes that Government of India has been announcing for promotion of trade and commerce, especially for exports, fail to achieve the desired results due to process and bureaucracy around its execution. The ministers, departments, RBI, banks, etc., make the delivery of scheme cumbersome, eventually making it unattractive due to time and efforts involved. Can't these schemes cut multiple touch points and using e-governance, digitization, bring under fast delivery link?
Yeah, in fact, this is something that is part of government's initiatives, and in some time in the future, some of these things will be taken into account. For example, the ULIP initiative, which is integrating all the logistics, the transportation aspect. Within that, we're also looking at developing some kind of single window clearance and so on. But yeah, these things absolutely. This is very well known. What is being asked is really very important and quite a well-known deficiency we have at an implementation level, and the government is doing whatever is needed, coming up with some plans and ideas to eliminate all these deficiencies, so that the last mile delivery is efficient and transparent and beneficial for everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Badri. So, as you mentioned, now various changes are coming, and it is in progress. We are seeing, compared to previous olden days, now lots of online, and the bureaucracy is getting reduced. So definitely, it is progressing we are towards that thing. Thanks, Dr. Badri, and thanks, Vinod Chaubey, for the query. And we have another query from Abhijit. India is well positioned to become USD 5 trillion economy, looking at economic shift from West to South Asia way forward. Believe it's high time that regulators promote such innovative trade finance products like export factoring by extending interest subventions, etc. Would appreciate your views in this regard. Dr. Badri, over to you.
Yeah. So this economic shift is definitely happening, and the Western. It's not necessarily a shift from West to South Asia, but more from within Asia, like shift from East Asia, Southeast Asia to South Asia, and so on. But it's not. It's happening slowly, and but this opportunity is there. This $5 trillion economy is happening. It's just a matter of time. In a couple of years, this is going to happen. But yes, these trade finance is also being examined in India. We have some discussions going on. You might have seen a report released by some of my other colleagues recently, called digital finance and digital banking and so on. So this is definitely a work in progress. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Badri.
If I may add, just to add what Dr. Batri mentioned,
Yeah.
this is, definitely going, progressing well, as Dr. Batri mentioned, and and really to show, give you an example, there is efficacy on the ground also. The Ministry of Finance has come up with Gift City, right? So Gift City, they are enabling as an various platforms for who are going to be running export factoring and the mechanism. So what we used to see earlier, the business moving on to the Middle East or developed economies in Asia, there is an opportunity for holding back or managing that business through the Gift City. So that's an excellent example of the regulators' push and the ministry's push towards new means of financing, and that's what they realize also, that there is a growing need to move to the new age mechanisms. Another example, Trades itself was a unknown in 2017 when it was launched. Yesterday, the three trades platforms I was discussing with, they mentioned that in the first year they did an annual turnover of $5 million annually. All three put together, they did a business of $5 million. Last year, that is financial year ending March 2022, all of them put together possibly did an annual turnover of close to $8 billion. So that's a huge number, a growth in 4 years' time, which has been seen. That is, of course, in the domestic part, and that's what is expected. That with the opening up of these platforms for the global trade, these numbers initially may be low, but definitely that's a new initiative which is being supported by the Ministry of Finance and the regulators as such. So I see that support is there, and I believe that support is going to be only increasing towards contribution towards making India a 5 trillion economy. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Ravi. And we have another viewer's question, Debasish Mishra. To Dr. Badri, good morning, sir. Request you to kindly throw some light on the thought process behind the increase of 15% export tax on the Indian stainless steel exports. The efforts of this in the Indian industry. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the specific questions like this, but it is sufficient to say broadly that I mentioned earlier that when the input costs are increasing, government has to take certain steps to ensure that the domestic input costs do not escalate further. So these are some temporary measures, export restrictions and export taxes and so on. These are temporary measures, and I, as an economist, I'm also not in favor of these things happening in a longer term. And the government's intention is also not to do these things in the longer term. These are all temporary measures. When you have extraordinary times, you have to take some extraordinary measures. So that's what I would say generally for these things. So absolutely, if you have these taxes for like 10 years, 15 years, and they become a practice, then it's a problem. But my sense is that it's not. That's not the intention of my colleagues, and it's definitely an extraordinary measure for the situation we are facing now.
Thank you, Dr. Badri. And we have a question regarding inflation. While inflation is globally high, in the US, it is the highest it has been in 40 years. And we are hearing worrying recessionary predictions for US. How realistic are these? Ravi, can you take it up?
Yeah, thanks, Vinod. Of course, in the short term, as Dr. Badri also mentioned, that these are all the effect of the extraordinary black swan events, right? Can you contain those things? Obviously, no. There are trends. There are signs of recessionary trends, as you call, at the global level. But I would say that these are within 2022, not even going beyond 2023. Hopefully, the things will not move towards those trends, and the short-term inflationary trends are going to be there. But will it have a global impact? That's what the global economists I was hearing, a couple of days, and all of them are sharing the views that this is a short-term pangs which are going to affect the global world. Fortunately for India, we are in a sweet spot. You are seeing that global pressures of the supply chain. In some Southeast Asian countries were completely blocked out, and they were not doing any sort of a trade. So that business is actually moving into India. On top of that, Indian economy itself is a high domestic growth industry. There is a huge consumption demand, which is always going to be there with a 1.4 billion population. The economy is quite self-sufficient. Plus, the huge emphasis by the government on the infrastructure. We saw the recent Guinness Book of Record on the infrastructure road being laid in such a short duration. So all these are contributing to the maintaining the growth for India itself. So I don't see that global recessionary trends will affect India in a very significant way. Yes, anything today the world is global, connected, very well connected, because of which the global recessions will have an impact, but I would not say that it will have a very significant impact on India. I believe and continue to believe in the India story for next 5 to 7 years in the minimum. Thanks.
Thanks, Ravi. So, as you mentioned, this is a temporary scenario, so we hope for the best. And we have another question regarding the infrastructure development of India. So here there is post-COVID, we are seeing a change in global trade trend. All large buyers, they are considering India as a main sourcing hub. They are started implementing China plus one policy. So the more volume of trade is going to come, it's already coming. And also Niti Aayog also working towards achieving the goals for New India of 5 trillion USD economy by 2030. To capitalize the growth and significant improvement in infrastructure is required to reduce transaction and transit and cost and time. So we are sure Niti Aayog and Government of India working very closely in this matter. Please give us some update. Which are the main areas currently we are working on?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I had already mentioned about this ULIP policy, that ULIP platform that links all the logistic logistical aspects in one platform. That is one thing, and also the Gati Shakti platform is another, where we can have a very granular view of how infrastructure is happening in different places, and that can help state governments, local governments, and the central government work together to fill in the gaps and develop stronger infrastructure and do a lot of data analytics. Somebody was talking about AI and ML. Those kind of things can be used here to understand how, to what extent the exporters are facing difficulties in terms of infrastructure, and eliminate those deficiencies. Right. So that is one thing. A lot of digital platforms and modern the latest disruptive technologies being used for that. And also, in terms of opportunity, like you mentioned, China plus one is a big opportunity, and also our pragmatic positioning in the Russia-Ukraine crisis also helps us stay connected with both the West and Russia, and that is also helping us to alleviate some of the price concerns, because we are able to get cheaper inputs from all these countries because of their mutual lack of demand, in irrespective of the increasing prices otherwise. And also greater opportunities there, greater export opportunities also in all the countries that are being in conflict. And also we also get I've been discussing with some of the countries which are actually looking for India as an alternative to some of the things being produced by Ukraine and Russia also, because its infrastructure is shattered now. So now we can fill in some of the things they were producing, like wheat is a big example, and so on. So, but in terms of infrastructure, yes, these are some aspects. And another thing to think about for in Indian context is that India is one of the few countries in the world which has to grow very fast at the same time green. So we have a commitment to go to net zero by 2070, as Honorable Prime Minister said. But in reality, we may have to do it even earlier, because that's a broad target. But different industries may have to have quicker targets. And even with the situations like with new kind of policies coming up, like the European border adjustment mechanism kind of policies, which they're also going to push us further. So we have to get the infrastructure also ready in that aspect. Like electric vehicles is a big thing that we are pushing for, and the charging infrastructure is another aspect. So all these different types of infrastructure, not only the export related infrastructure, but also the green economic infrastructure also has to be developed, and we are working on that. Multiple ministries are working together. Niti Aayog also playing a part in that. So those are different things, and we are talking about green hydrogen and all these aspects. So yeah, definitely infrastructure is a big focus of the government, and it has to be for all these reasons.
Thank you, Dr. Badri. So it is clear that government is working on various infrastructure projects, and also it is good to know that it is balancing. They are also focusing on the green net zero, and it's very important. And government is also working on that. And we have another question from Vinod Chaube. Another question to Dr. Gopalakishan. As India has geographically advantage along coastline, oceans around India or channels, route that connect major global markets. The constraints that are observed at the port in India having challenges in managing handling cargo may be addressed by developing ports at Andaman's Lakshadweep. This may not only ease traffic on Indian ports, make cargo handling faster and efficient. Handling global cargo on the route can open up revenue source for India. Dr. Badri, over to you.
Yeah, definitely. This is also a work in progress by the government, and there is a lot of efforts being taken in this regard. I had a discussion with the Home Secretary in Andaman and Nicobar Island, for example, and I heard a lot of updates happening there. For example, a new terminal of Port Blair International Airport is coming up there. the port infrastructure is being developed there in a big way. And the government has a huge vision actually for major infrastructural development there. In fact, there have been some cynics saying that, why do we need such a huge development in these island states and territories? But like Mr. Chobe pointed out, it's absolutely important from a strategic point of view, from a trade point of view, because they can easily connect from there to let's say Singapore, which is a huge hub, and also all other countries in Southeast Asia. We are going to be very close to this market. So definitely this is also in the making. In the government is working on it. So, and it's already there in news. You can already see some developments that are happening there.
Thank you, Dr. Badri. And we have another question to Ravi. India Factoring recently has been recognized as International Factoring Provider of the Year in RFX Awards by BCR Publication London. And also there is another recent award for complex deal structure. So please give us more what these awards all about and the future plans of India Factoring.
Thanks, Vinod. Yes, indeed, there were two awards from the BCR last month, and yesterday itself from FCI for the Deal of the Year. I would want to touch upon the Deal of the Year specifically, just to showcase that what businesses we are talking about. So these are the real instances where the business flows. What we're talking about. Movement of flows from India is happening, and the shift is gradual and quite significant. The customer, what we got the award yesterday for the Deal of the Year has actually put up a unit specifically for the global buyer in electronic space. These are backed by these chips, which we have seen that there is a global shortage, and there is India is taking advantage of that in movement towards that in manufacturing that space. We have seen some PLI schemes in that segment also. So this customer is also one of the big ones, and setting up specifically 100,000 square foot unit specifically dedicated for the particular buyer in that space, electronic space. So that's the shift which we are seeing, that there is investment which is happening, and on the back of that, we are able to finance such strong transactions. And of course, awards are just one aspect of it, which showcases that in entirety, all aspects of the trade, which is the buyer, seller, the financing services, is working out in the proper manner. So it's the efficacy of on the ground is demonstrated by these the deals, by these transactions, and when they are appreciated by the global audience across these the global publications and global associations, that showcases that the business is indeed effective on ground in India. There are flows happening in India, and on the back of the flows, definitely there is going to be financing opportunities. We happen to be one of the leading ones, of course, but there are definitely more who are waiting in the wings to offer these financial services, and we'll be more than happy to contribute in the collective growth of India's exports as a financier. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ravi. And we are running out of time. So another question, we take a last question from LinkedIn user. Hi, Ravi. Good to see you after a long time. Any plan for FimBank to expand to Australia?
For now, we are happy to serve from India, the entire Asia. But definitely, if there is enough opportunities, like we heard there is an FTA already in place between India and Australia. Definitely, there is more to be done, and I believe that probably from Gift City we can service Australia itself. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Dr. Badri, for joining us and sharing your insightful thoughts on global trade and the new initiatives government is taking now. So it is very helpful for the exporters. And thank you, Ravi, for joining us and sharing your insightful thoughts on export trade and finance arrangements for exporters. Thanks, Ravi.
Thanks, Dr. Badrinaran. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ravi, and thanks, Mr. Vinod, for the great questions. And also thanks to the participants also for the great questions. It's a great way to engage with the industry and the participants, so we can we also have to hear what are the bottlenecks that the exporters are facing and the industry is facing, and this is a great way to interact and get the inputs from everyone while working on policy. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Hope all your questions were answered. If you want to know more about factoring or India factoring, please log into our LinkedIn page or YouTube channel, or you can directly get into our website to connect with our contact numbers. I'm signing off. We'll be back with an interesting topic and interesting speaker soon. Thank you. Have a great day.